Have you ever noticed how some people seem to attract money almost effortlessly, while others work non-stop and still feel stuck in survival mode? It's as if wealth gravitates towards certain individuals without strain, while for others it always feels just out of reach. What if the difference isn't intelligence, luck, education, or even hard work? What if the real difference comes down to 3 exact words you are not using yet? Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to this powerful transmission where we dive deep into the hidden laws of abundance inspired by the timeless teachings of Joseph Murphy. Today, you're going to discover how to command your first $1 million from the universe using 3 exact words that quietly reshape your financial destiny. Before we go deeper, take a moment to ground yourself, open your heart, and allow this message to land exactly where it's meant to. Let's start with something deeply relatable. Have you ever tried affirmations, vision boards, or positive thinking, only to look at your bank account and feel discouraged? You stand in front of the mirror saying, "I am wealthy," while your reality seems to mock you with bills, debt, or financial pressure. If that's you, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken, and you are not failing. The reason these techniques haven't worked has nothing to do with your worth or effort. It has everything to do with the language you are unconsciously using every single day. Here's the truth most people never stop to examine. We spend hours researching which phone to buy, which car is best, or which product has the best reviews. Yet we rarely analyze the words we speak constantly about money, life, and ourselves. Your phone will never make you wealthy, but your words absolutely can. Every word you speak carries energy. Every sentence is an instruction, and the universe responds with absolute precision, not to what you wish, but to what you consistently declare. This is not fantasy or blind optimism. This is a principle Joseph Murphy emphasized repeatedly. The subconscious mind accepts what you impress upon it through feeling, belief, and repeated language. And once impressed, it must express. The universe does not argue with your words. It simply mirrors them back as lived experience. That's why people who constantly speak about struggle continue to experience it, while those who speak from alignment seem to attract opportunity without effort. I know skepticism may be rising right now. You might be thinking, here we go again. Another message telling me to think my way into money while my bills are real. That reaction is natural. Stay with me. Because this is not about pretending your problems don't exist. It's about understanding why your current language keeps recreating them, and how a subtle shift can completely change the signal you are sending out. The people who attract wealth effortlessly are not special. They don't necessarily work harder or know more than you. What they have mastered is invisible. They speak a different energetic language. Their words don't reinforce limitation. They don't place orders for scarcity. They unconsciously speak from alignment, choice, and expectation, and that is what you are about to learn. Think of your words as pebbles dropped into a vast cosmic pond. Each time you speak, you create ripples that travel outward, interact with reality itself, and eventually return to you as experiences. When you repeatedly speak the language of lack, you are placing consistent orders for more lack. When you change your words, you change your orders. And when you change your orders, reality must reorganize. This is why saying, "I am wealthy," often fails. When your nervous system, subconscious mind, and lived experience all scream the opposite, those words create inner conflict. The subconscious mind rejects what feels untrue. Joseph Murphy taught that the subconscious does not respond to forced affirmations, it responds to emotional acceptance. That's why the 3 words you're about to learn work so powerfully. They do not require denial. They create alignment. Most manifestation techniques collapse because they try to paint positivity over fear. It's like planting seeds in soil that hasn't been cleared. The intention is good, but the foundation is wrong. True transformation happens when you change the underlying language patterns you use automatically. These patterns form your energetic blueprint, and the universe responds to that blueprint with astonishing accuracy. Imagine for a moment that the universe is a literal neutral system. It does not judge, it does not reward or punish, it simply responds. When you say, I can't afford that. The universe hears affordability, limitation, and exclusion. It doesn't hear your desire. It hears your declaration, and it responds accordingly. This leads to one of the most important revelations you will ever understand. Speaking from lack is like walking into a restaurant and repeatedly ordering disappointment, then getting angry when that's what arrives. The universe is the most literal waiter imaginable. It does not reinterpret your words into something better. It delivers exactly what you order, again and again. Now imagine realizing that you can change your order at any moment. That is where your power returns. That is where the illusion of victimhood dissolves. And that is where the 3 exact words come in. Before I reveal them fully, I want you to understand why this works so deeply. Your words are not passive descriptions of reality. They are active creators of it. Most people speak unconsciously, repeating phrases learned from family, culture, and stress. Money is tight. Times are hard. I'll never get ahead. These statements feel harmless, but they are powerful commands. Joseph Murphy observed that those who removed what he called poverty talk from their vocabulary experienced rapid shifts in opportunity, perception, and financial flow. Not because money magically appeared, but because their subconscious mind stopped blocking it. Their awareness changed. Their decisions changed. Their confidence changed. And the universe responded. Let's introduce a powerful mental experiment. Imagine a genie following you all day, granting every sentence you speak out loud. Not your hopes, not your wishes, your actual words. How carefully would you speak? If you believed this was happening, you would immediately stop saying, I can't afford that, I'm always broke, or money never sticks around. You would realize those phrases are not observations, they are spells. The shocking truth is that this genie exists. It is the universe itself, and it is responding constantly. The only reason most people don't see results is because they are unaware of what they are asking for. This brings us to the first of the 3 exact words that command abundance: choose. The word choose instantly shifts your energy from victim to creator. When you say, I can't afford that, you declare powerlessness. When you say, I choose to allocate my money differently right now, you reclaim authority. The facts may be identical, but the energetic signal is completely different. Choice carries sovereignty. It tells your subconscious mind that you are in control even within constraints. Instead of, I have to pay these bills, you say, I choose to honor my financial commitments. Instead of, I'm stuck in this job, you say, I'm choosing this role while I create my next opportunity. One creates contraction. The other creates movement. When you use the word choose, something fascinating happens neurologically. Your brain's filtering system begins searching for options instead of obstacles. Your awareness expands. Possibilities that were invisible suddenly come into focus. This is not magic. This is alignment between language and perception. The second word is love. This word transforms how you relate to abundance you don't yet possess. When you see something you want and feel frustration or envy, you create resistance. When you say, I love seeing examples of abundance, you create resonance. You are no longer pushing wealth away. You are aligning with it. Joseph Murphy observed that appreciation without ownership is one of the fastest ways to dissolve resistance. When you love abundance in others, in objects, in opportunities, you signal safety to your subconscious mind. You tell it that wealth is not a threat. And when the mind feels safe, it allows expansion. The third word is appreciate. Appreciation is gratitude with expectation. When you appreciate something, you recognize its value and invite more. Generic gratitude often hides scarcity, especially when it sounds like settling. True appreciation acknowledges flow. I appreciate how money shows up for me. I appreciate unexpected financial support. I appreciate opportunities finding me. Complaint is one of the most destructive financial habits in modern culture. People bond over stress, prices, and struggle. It feels normal. But every complaint reinforces the very condition being complained about. When you replace complaint with appreciation, you stop feeding the problem. Now let's connect these 3 words into a living practice. Awareness comes first. For the next week, simply notice how often you speak from lack. Don't judge yourself. Observe, each phrase is data. Each moment is an opportunity to redirect. When you catch yourself about to say something disempowering, pause, replace it. Not with denial, but with creation language. Instead of, "I can't afford that," say, "I'm creating the financial path to make that possible." Instead of, "I'm drowning in debt," say, "I'm implementing a plan that improves my financial position daily." This is not lying to yourself. This is refusing to define yourself by temporary conditions. Language shapes identity. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior shapes results. One of the most overlooked aspects of abundance is the ability to receive. Many people unknowingly reject wealth through politeness. They deflect compliments, they refuse help, they minimize their value. Each rejection trains the subconscious mind to block flow. When someone offers you something, say thank you. When someone acknowledges your value, receive it. Receiving is not selfish, it is necessary. Wealth cannot flow through a system that constantly pushes it away. As your language shifts, you will notice people responding differently to you. Opportunities arise. Conversations change. This is not coincidence. Your energy becomes magnetic. Confidence replaces desperation. Value replaces neediness. It's important to be clear, this is not about sitting back and waiting for money to appear. Language and action must align. When your words shift, your actions naturally follow. You make better decisions. You notice opportunities. You act with clarity instead of fear. This is the prosperity circuit Joseph Murphy described. Words shape energy. Energy directs action. Action produces results. Results reinforce belief. The loop accelerates. You may stumble. Old patterns may resurface. That is normal. Each time you notice and redirect, you strengthen your new blueprint. Mastery is built through awareness, not perfection. Create a personal abundance vocabulary. Write phrases that feel authentic yet expansive. Keep them accessible. Use them daily. Over time, they become your natural voice. The final realization I want to leave you with is this: wealth does not begin in the bank account. It begins in the language you use to describe your life. Your words are shaping your reality right now. The question is whether they are building bridges or walls. The universe is listening. It always has been. And when you speak with choice, love, and appreciation, you are no longer hoping for wealth. You are commanding alignment with it. Your $1,000,000 reality does not start someday. It starts the moment your words change. And once you understand this, something profound begins to settle inside you. You realize that abundance has never been something outside of you, something distant or reserved for a lucky few. It has always been responding to you, moment by moment, through the language you use to define your life. Wealth was never ignoring you. It was simply answering you honestly. This is why Joseph Murphy emphasized that the subconscious mind is impersonal. It does not reason. It does not negotiate. It accepts the impressions you give it and works tirelessly to make them real. When your words repeatedly describe struggle, the subconscious mind accepts struggle as your identity and organizes behavior, perception, and opportunity to match it. When your words describe choice, love, and appreciation, the subconscious mind accepts expansion as your identity and begins clearing the path. Most people never experience this shift because they are trying to change results without changing identity. They focus on income without addressing self-concept. But identity is formed through language. The way you speak about money becomes the way you see yourself in relation to money. And the way you see yourself determines what you allow into your life. This is why saying, "I want to be wealthy," keeps wealth at a distance. Wanting implies lack. It implies separation. Joseph Murphy taught that the subconscious mind responds best to the feeling of being in motion toward something, not longing for it from afar. That is why language like "I am becoming," "I am creating," and "I am expanding" is so powerful. It places you on the path instead of staring at it. When you begin speaking from your future self, something subtle but powerful happens. Your decisions start aligning with that identity. You stop tolerating situations that drain you. You become more selective with your time, your energy, and your focus. You invest differently. You negotiate differently. You show up differently. And the world responds differently. This is not about pretending you already have millions in the bank. It's about embodying the version of you who knows they are capable of creating them. That version of you exists right now as potential, and language is the bridge between potential and reality. One of the most overlooked shifts happens when you stop saying, someday. Someday keeps abundance safely out of reach. It removes urgency and responsibility. When you replace someday with now in motion, you activate momentum. I am building wealth. I am expanding my income streams. I am learning how money works. These statements don't deny your current situation. They declare your trajectory. As this becomes your default way of speaking, you will notice a fascinating change in how challenges feel. Problems no longer feel like personal failures. They feel like puzzles. Temporary obstacles instead of permanent verdicts. You stop asking, why does this always happen to me? And start asking, how can this work for me? That single shift opens doors most people never see. Joseph Murphy often spoke about the importance of emotional neutrality. When you remove emotional charge from lack, it loses its grip. When you stop fighting your current circumstances and instead redirect your language, resistance dissolves. The universe does not respond to force. It responds to alignment. This is also why gratitude alone sometimes fails. Gratitude without expectation can unconsciously communicate settling. True appreciation carries expansion. It says, I see the flow and I'm ready for more. When appreciation is paired with choice and love, it becomes a powerful command rather than passive acceptance. Another critical layer of this work is your environment. Language is contagious. Spend enough time around scarcity talk and it seeps into your consciousness. Complaints about prices, fear-based news, constant discussions about struggle, all of it programs the subconscious mind. This doesn't mean you isolate yourself. It means you become intentional, seek voices that speak possibility. Feed your mind with language that expands you. Protect your inner dialogue like you would protect fertile soil. Because whatever grows there will eventually appear in your outer world. As you practice this, you may notice discomfort. Old beliefs will resist change. That's not failure. That's evidence of rewiring. Each time you catch yourself and choose different words, you are literally reshaping neural pathways. You are training your mind to expect solutions instead of problems, and this is where action naturally follows. Abundant language creates abundant behavior. You take inspired action instead of forced action. You move from clarity instead of panic. You begin to trust yourself, and trust invites opportunity. One day, often unexpectedly, you look back and realize something has shifted. Money flows differently. Conversations change. Opportunities appear where none existed before. Not because the universe suddenly decided to bless you, but because you finally began speaking in a way it could respond to. This is the quiet truth behind wealth creation that few talk about. Wealth is not chased. It is aligned with, and alignment begins with words. So from this moment forward, speak as someone who chooses. Speak as someone who loves abundance in all its forms. Speak as someone who appreciates every step of the journey. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to prove anything. You only need consistency. Your words are shaping your reality right now. Let them reflect the life you are ready to live. Because the universe is always listening, and when you speak with clarity, confidence, and alignment, it has no choice but to respond. And as this understanding deepens, you begin to realize that the universe has never been withholding anything from you. It has simply been responding to the signal you've been broadcasting. Every word, every phrase, every casual remark about money has been part of that signal. And now, for the first time, you are consciously tuning it. This is where many people experience a quiet internal shift before anything external changes. You start feeling calmer around money, less reactive, less emotional. That calm is not indifference, it's confidence beginning to form. It's the subconscious mind relaxing its grip on fear, and when fear loosens, creativity enters. Joseph Murphy taught that creativity is one of the highest expressions of abundance. When the mind is no longer locked into survival language, it naturally begins generating ideas, connections, and insights. You suddenly think of opportunities you hadn't considered. Conversations spark possibilities. Seemingly small moments begin opening unexpected doors. This is why wealth often appears suddenly to those who are aligned. From the outside, it looks like luck. From the inside, it feels inevitable. The groundwork was laid long before the visible result. It was laid in language. Another powerful realization emerges at this stage. You stop resenting money. Many people unconsciously hold anger toward wealth, toward those who have it, toward systems that distribute it, toward life itself. That resentment acts like a barrier. When you begin speaking with love and appreciation, that barrier dissolves. Money no longer feels like an enemy or a source of stress. It becomes a neutral tool, something that flows where it is welcomed. You also begin to notice how often scarcity language disguises itself as realism. Phrases like, "I'm just being honest," or "I'm just stating facts," often hide deeply ingrained beliefs. But facts are temporary. Language turns them into identities. When you stop identifying with temporary conditions, they lose their power to define you. At this point, your relationship with time changes as well. You stop feeling rushed. You stop panicking about deadlines and timelines. You trust the process because you're actively participating in it. You're no longer waiting for abundance, you're walking toward it. Joseph Murphy emphasized that the subconscious mind thrives on repetition paired with emotion. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. You don't need dramatic declarations, you need steady alignment. A calm, confident tone that says, "This is who I am becoming." As days turn into weeks, you may find that your internal dialogue shifts even before your spoken words do. You catch limiting thoughts earlier. You redirect them faster. The gap between awareness and change shortens. That's mastery forming. One of the most powerful moments comes when you realize you no longer feel ashamed of wanting more. Wanting more no longer feels greedy or unrealistic. It feels natural. Expansion becomes normal. Desire becomes direction, not guilt. This is when your actions subtly upgrade. You invest in learning. You value your time differently. You say no to what drains you and yes to what aligns you. Not out of force, but out of clarity. Abundance becomes a standard, not a fantasy. Eventually, a tipping point arrives. Opportunities begin arriving faster than doubt can catch up. Money shows up in ways that feel almost casual. A refund, a new client, a raise, a collaboration. None of it feels shocking anymore, it feels aligned. And that's the quiet miracle of this work. Not that wealth appears, but that it no longer feels foreign. It feels familiar, expected, welcomed. This is why the three words matter so deeply. Choose keeps you empowered. Love keeps you aligned. Appreciate keeps the flow open. Together, they form a language the universe understands instantly. You don't need to announce this transformation to anyone. You don't need validation. The results will speak for themselves. Your only responsibility is to remain aware of the words you allow to shape your inner and outer world. So as you move forward from this moment, let your language reflect your evolution. Speak gently. Speak deliberately. Speak as someone who knows they are capable of extraordinary things. Because the universe is not testing you. It is responding to you. And when your words align with abundance, abundance aligns with you. And as this alignment stabilizes, you may notice something else quietly changing inside you. The urgency fades. The constant pressure to figure everything out right now softens. You stop feeling like you're racing against time. This is not complacency. This is trust being restored. Joseph Murphy spoke often about trust as a creative force, not blind faith but calm expectation. When your language carries expectation instead of desperation, your nervous system relaxes. And a relaxed nervous system is far more powerful than a stressed one. It sees clearly. It responds intelligently. It makes decisions from clarity instead of fear. This is why frantic effort so often fails. People work harder and harder while speaking the language of struggle, and their nervous system stays locked in survival. From that state, they miss opportunities, undervalue themselves, and repeat the same cycles. When language changes, the body follows. When the body follows, behavior changes. And behavior is what ultimately creates results. At this stage, you may find yourself naturally letting go of habits that no longer serve you. Not because you're forcing discipline, but because they no longer match who you're becoming. Conversations rooted in complaint feel draining. Environments that thrive on fear feel uncomfortable. This is not superiority, it's alignment. You're not rejecting people, you're choosing coherence. And coherence is powerful. When your inner world and outer behavior match, energy stops leaking. Momentum builds. Another subtle but important shift occurs in how you interpret setbacks. What once felt like proof that this never works for me, now feels like feedback, information, redirection. Instead of collapsing into discouragement, you adjust, you refine, you continue. This resilience is one of the strongest indicators of future wealth. Joseph Murphy emphasized that persistence is not stubbornness. It is alignment maintained over time. When your words remain consistent even when circumstances fluctuate, the subconscious mind stays impressed with the new pattern, and eventually reality must conform. You may also notice that your goals begin to evolve. What once felt impossible now feels reasonable. What once felt too much now feels like the next logical step. This is not inflation of ego. This is expansion of capacity. Wealth at its core is capacity. The capacity to receive, the capacity to manage, the capacity to create. Language expands capacity before money ever arrives. That's why this work always precedes external success. And then, often without fanfare, you cross an invisible threshold. You realize you are no longer trying to manifest wealth. You are simply living from a wealth-conscious state. The struggle narrative dissolves. You stop telling stories about how hard things are. You stop rehearsing lack. Silence replaces complaint. Presence replaces anxiety. Intention replaces reaction. From this state, abundance flows in ways that feel natural, not dramatic, not mystical. Just aligned. You still take action. You still make plans. But the friction is gone. Resistance has dissolved. This is why those who truly understand these principles rarely talk about them loudly. They don't need to convince anyone. Their results speak quietly but clearly, and this is the final truth I want to leave with you. The universe does not respond to intensity. It responds to consistency. It does not respond to begging. It responds to clarity. And clarity begins with the words you choose to describe your life. So choose consciously, love abundantly, appreciate generously, not as a technique, not as a ritual, but as a way of being. Because the moment your language aligns with expansion, the universe recognizes you as someone who is ready. And from that moment on, wealth is no longer something you chase. It becomes something that meets you halfway. And when wealth begins meeting you halfway, you realize that nothing about this process was rushed or accidental. It unfolded in rhythm, in sequence, in alignment with who you were becoming. The universe did not move faster than you were ready to receive, and it did not move slower than your willingness to grow. It moved precisely with you. This is where many people misunderstand abundance. They believe money changes people. In truth, money reveals people. It amplifies what already exists. That is why the inner work always comes first. Language reshapes identity. Identity reshapes behavior. Behavior reshapes outcomes. This order cannot be reversed. Joseph Murphy taught that the subconscious mind operates through images, feelings, and words. When your words consistently carry the feeling of capability rather than deficiency, your inner image shifts. You no longer see yourself as someone waiting for a break. You see yourself as someone building momentum, and that internal image quietly directs every choice you make. You begin trusting your instincts more. You stop second-guessing yourself as much. You recognize when something is not aligned and walk away without guilt. You recognize when something is meant for you and step forward without fear. This discernment is one of the most valuable assets wealth-conscious people possess. At this stage, patience takes on a new meaning. It is no longer passive waiting. It is active confidence. You know results are coming because your inner state has changed. You no longer need constant reassurance. You are grounded in expectation without attachment. An expectation without attachment is powerful. It allows the universe room to surprise you. It removes rigid timelines and opens creative pathways. Wealth rarely arrives in the exact form the mind predicts. It arrives in forms the aligned mind can recognize and receive. You also begin to notice that abundance is not limited to money. Support appears. Guidance appears. Connections appear. These are not distractions. They are precursors. Money often follows alignment, not the other way around. This is why Joseph Murphy emphasized harmony with the law rather than force against it. When you stop resisting where you are and start speaking from where you're going, friction dissolves. The path smooths. Effort becomes effective instead of exhausting. Eventually, there is a quiet moment of recognition. You realize you no longer feel afraid of wealth. You no longer feel intimidated by large numbers, success stories, or opportunity. They feel familiar, neutral, possible. That neutrality is a sign of readiness. Fear repels, desire attracts, familiarity receives, and this is where the command truly takes effect. Not because you shouted it at the universe, but because you embodied it consistently. Your words stopped contradicting your intentions. Your inner world stopped fighting your outer goals. You didn't force wealth to arrive. You stopped blocking it. So as you continue forward, remember this: above all else, the universe is not something you need to convince. It is something you need to align with. Speak as someone who trusts the process. Speak as someone who expects growth. Speak as someone who understands that abundance is not earned through suffering, but allowed through coherence. The three words are simple, but their impact is profound. Choose restores power. Love dissolves resistance. Appreciate keeps the flow open. Together, they create a language that signals readiness, and when the universe hears readiness, it responds quietly, consistently, inevitably. And as that inevitability settles in, something remarkable happens. You stop needing proof in advance. You stop asking for signs. You stop bargaining with the future. Not because you've given up hope, but because hope has matured into knowing. Joseph Murphy described this state as mental and emotional consent. When the mind consents to abundance as natural, the subconscious stops resisting it. There is no internal argument anymore. No part of you saying, "This is too good for me," or "This can't last." That inner peace is not passive. It is powerful. From this place, you begin to see how deeply conditioned scarcity really is in the world around you. You notice how casually people speak against themselves. How often they joke about being broke, complain about money, or dismiss opportunity before it has a chance to unfold. And instead of judging, you feel compassion, because you recognize that you once spoke that language too. But now your language has shifted, and with it your inner posture toward life. You stand differently, you listen differently, you respond instead of react. And this subtle shift is felt by others. People sense clarity, they sense grounded confidence. They trust you more, they respect you more. Opportunities flow through human channels long before they appear as money. This is another truth many overlook. Wealth rarely arrives in isolation. It comes through people, ideas, timing, and alignment. When your words align you with expansion, you naturally move into spaces where wealth circulates. Conversations change. Invitations appear. Doors open. Not all at once. Not dramatically, but consistently. And when challenges arise, as they always do, you no longer interpret them as signs to quit. You see them as refinement, calibration. Each challenge sharpens your clarity. Each adjustment strengthens your foundation. You are no longer building on shaky ground. Joseph Murphy often reminded his students that faith is not emotional excitement. Faith is inner agreement. When your words, thoughts, and actions agree with each other, results follow. And agreement begins with language. You no longer need to convince yourself with exaggerated affirmations. You no longer need to overpower doubt. You simply redirect it, calmly, gently, repeatedly, until abundance becomes the dominant narrative. This is the quiet discipline of prosperity, not hustle fueled by fear, but alignment sustained by awareness. You choose your words as carefully as you choose your investments, because you now understand that words are investments. They compound, daily, invisibly, powerfully, and one day, often without realizing when it happened, you notice that your external reality has caught up with your internal shift. The numbers change. The circumstances evolve. The life you once imagined now feels normal, not because you forced it into existence, but because you finally stopped speaking against it. And that is the true command. And when you recognize that, a deep sense of peace settles in, not excitement, not adrenaline. Peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you are no longer working against yourself. the kind that comes from realizing that the struggle was never the requirement. Alignment was. This is where many people misunderstand the idea of commanding wealth. They imagine force, intensity, or willpower. But true command is calm. It is clarity. It is coherence. When your inner world is clear, the outer world follows without resistance. Joseph Murphy taught that the subconscious mind responds most powerfully to conviction without tension. When you no longer feel the need to convince, prove, or chase, you have entered the state where manifestation becomes natural. Effort gives way to effectiveness. Action becomes precise instead of exhausting. From this place, your relationship with money transforms completely. Money is no longer emotional. It is informational. It tells you where you are aligned and where adjustments are needed. There is no shame in fluctuations, no panic in delays. You trust your ability to respond intelligently. This trust changes everything. You stop shrinking your desires to match your current reality. You allow reality to rise to meet your vision. And because your words are no longer sabotaging that vision, momentum builds quietly but steadily. You may still work hard. You may still face challenges. But the inner narrative has changed. You are no longer telling a story of struggle. You are telling a story of growth. And stories shape lives. Every time you choose your words consciously, you reinforce that story. Every time you speak with love instead of resentment, you dissolve resistance. Every time you appreciate instead of complain, you invite flow. These are not dramatic moments. They are small, consistent choices. And consistency is what the universe responds to. This is why the process feels almost invisible while it's happening. There is no single moment where everything shifts. There is a gradual alignment that becomes undeniable only in hindsight. One day you look back and realize you are living differently, thinking differently, earning differently. And the most powerful realization of all is this: you didn't become someone else. You became more of who you always were beneath the conditioning. The command was never spoken outwardly. It was spoken inwardly, through the language you allowed to define your life. So carry this forward with you, not as a technique to remember, but as an awareness to live by. Let your words reflect possibility. Let them reflect confidence. Let them reflect trust, because the universe has always been listening, and now you are finally speaking a language it can answer. And as that realization settles fully into your awareness, you begin to understand something that changes everything. You were never meant to struggle your way into abundance. Struggle was not the price of entry. It was simply the byproduct of misalignment. The moment alignment begins, struggle loses its purpose. Joseph Murphy often reminded his students that life is meant to be lived in harmony, not opposition. When you stop arguing with your reality and start speaking into it with intention, the current shifts. You are no longer pushing upstream. You are moving with the flow that was always there. This is why wealth creation starts to feel lighter the longer you practice this. You stop carrying emotional weight around money. You stop measuring your worth by numbers. And paradoxically, that is when numbers begin to grow. Because desperation has been removed from the equation, at this point, your inner dialogue becomes your greatest ally. It encourages instead of criticizes. It redirects instead of condemns. And that internal support system becomes the foundation for sustainable success. You no longer burn out. You no longer self-sabotage. You no longer abandon momentum just as things begin to work. The universe responds beautifully to this steadiness. It responds to clarity far more than effort. It responds to trust far more than tension. And trust is embedded in language long before it appears as confidence. You may notice that you are no longer impressed by shortcuts or quick fixes. You are grounded. You understand that wealth is built, received, and expanded through alignment, not force. This maturity is a sign of readiness. When money arrives from this state, it stays, it circulates, it multiplies, because it has arrived into a system that knows how to hold it. And that is the final layer of this truth. The universe does not give more to those who want more. It gives more to those who are prepared to receive, manage, and appreciate more. Language is how preparation begins. So as you move forward, let this be your quiet practice. Not perfection. Awareness. not pressure. Consistency. Speak as someone who knows their path is unfolding. Speak as someone who trusts the unseen work being done on their behalf. Speak as someone who understands that abundance is not distant, it is responsive. Because every time you choose your words consciously, you are choosing your future. And the future you are speaking into existence is already listening. This is not the end of the journey. It is the moment you realize you've been walking the right direction all along. And with that knowing, you step into a different relationship with life itself. You no longer feel like you are trying to extract something from the world. You feel like you are participating in a dialogue with it. A conversation that has always been happening, but one you are now consciously engaged in. This is where effort transforms into elegance. You still act, you still plan, you still grow. But there is no internal resistance pulling you in the opposite direction. Your words, thoughts, and actions are moving together. And when they move together, progress accelerates without strain. Joseph Murphy taught that harmony within produces harmony without. When the inner conversation becomes supportive, life begins to cooperate. Opportunities don't feel random anymore. Timing doesn't feel cruel. Everything starts to make sense in retrospect. You see how each step prepared you for the next. You also stop fearing pauses. Periods of stillness no longer feel like failure. They feel like integration. You trust that something is aligning beneath the surface. Because it always is. The universe does not stop working simply because you cannot see movement yet. And then there is gratitude, not forced, not performative, but quiet and grounded. Gratitude for the clarity you now have. Gratitude for the awareness that returned your power. Gratitude for the understanding that nothing was ever wrong with you. This gratitude is different. It doesn't shrink your desires. It expands your capacity to receive them. It says, I see how far I've come, and I'm ready for what's next. From this place, the idea of commanding your first $1 million no longer feels dramatic or unrealistic. It feels like a milestone, a byproduct, one of many expressions of alignment. The number itself loses emotional charge. It becomes a symbol of flow, not worth. And that is the true transformation. When money no longer defines you, it begins to serve you. When you stop chasing it, it begins responding. When you stop speaking against it, it begins arriving. So let this be the moment you remember who you are. A conscious creator, a participant in abundance, someone whose words carry direction and power. Choose your language with intention. Love abundance in every form you encounter. Appreciate every sign of flow, no matter how small, because the universe has always been listening. And now you are finally speaking from alignment. And from alignment, everything changes. And as everything changes, you begin to realize that this journey was never about money alone. Money was simply the doorway. The real transformation was learning how to live in agreement with yourself, how to stop betraying your desires with careless language, how to stop shrinking your future with unconscious words. This awareness carries into every area of your life. Relationships soften, decisions become cleaner, you feel less divided inside. When you are no longer at war with your own expectations, life meets you with the same peace. Joseph Murphy taught that when the subconscious mind is impressed with harmony, it produces harmony effortlessly. That harmony expresses itself as health, confidence, opportunity, and yes, financial abundance. But by the time abundance arrives, it no longer defines you. It complements you. You no longer measure progress by urgency. You measure it by alignment. You trust the pace because you trust yourself. And that trust is the foundation of everything lasting. From this place, you stop waiting for permission. You don't need circumstances to validate your direction. You move because it feels right, not because you are afraid of falling behind. This is the energy from which real wealth is built. And if doubt ever tries to return, you don't fight it. You simply notice it and choose again. You love the reminder. You appreciate the awareness. You redirect gently. Because you now understand that mastery is not about never slipping, it's about returning to alignment faster each time. So let your words continue to evolve as you do. Let them be deliberate. Let them be kind. Let them reflect the reality you are ready to live into. You are not commanding the universe through force. You are commanding it through coherence. And when coherence becomes your natural state, abundance stops being a question. It becomes the answer. And when abundance becomes the answer, life begins to feel strangely simple. Not easy in the sense of effortless perfection, but simple in the sense of clarity. You know what aligns. You know what doesn't. You no longer waste energy negotiating with paths that were never meant for you. Joseph Murphy spoke of this simplicity as the natural state of the aligned mind. When inner conflict dissolves, complexity fades. Decisions stop feeling heavy. You stop carrying the emotional weight of what if and why not me? Those questions no longer have power because you are no longer standing outside your own life looking in. You are inside it, participating, choosing, creating. And this is why the universe responds so clearly now. There is no mixed signal, no contradiction between what you desire and what you declare. Your words are no longer undermining your intentions. They are reinforcing them. You may still encounter moments of uncertainty. That is part of being human. But uncertainty no longer feels threatening. It feels like an open space, a place where something new can emerge. And instead of filling that space with fear, you fill it with trust. Trust that your path is unfolding. Trust that your timing is precise. Trust that what you are becoming can support what you are calling in. This trust is not blind. It is built. Built through every conscious choice of language. Every moment you chose alignment over habit. Every time you spoke possibility instead of limitation. And that is why this works. Not because the words themselves are magical, but because of who you become when you use them consistently. You become someone who listens to themselves, someone who respects their inner direction, someone who no longer argues with their own expansion. So when you speak now, you do so with awareness. You understand that your words are not casual. They are directional. They are shaping your perception, your actions, and your outcomes. This is the quiet power Joseph Murphy was pointing to all along. The power of agreement between the conscious and subconscious mind. When that agreement exists, resistance dissolves. And when resistance dissolves, life moves. You are no longer waiting for abundance to arrive. You are no longer proving that you deserve it. You are simply living in a way that allows it. And from that place, wealth is not a miracle. It is the natural response. And as that natural response continues to unfold, you begin to see your life through a new lens. You recognize how many moments in the past were quietly preparing you for this awareness. Every delay, every setback, every period of uncertainty was shaping your capacity to receive without fear and hold without anxiety. Nothing was wasted. Joseph Murphy taught that the subconscious mind never forgets a lesson once it is truly learned. When you learn alignment, it becomes permanent. You may revisit old emotions occasionally, but you no longer live there. You pass through them with understanding instead of getting trapped. This is why abundance, once allowed, tends to expand rather than disappear. It is no longer dependent on mood or circumstance. It is rooted in identity. And identity, once shifted, becomes self-reinforcing. You now understand that the universe was never asking you to become someone new. It was asking you to stop speaking against who you already were becoming. The moment you stopped contradicting yourself, momentum began. And this is the quiet confidence you now carry. Not arrogance, not bravado, confidence grounded in self-trust. You trust your ability to adapt. You trust your ability to learn. You trust your ability to create value. That trust is worth more than any single financial milestone. From here, the idea of your first $1 million no longer feels heavy or overwhelming. It feels like one chapter in a much larger story. A story defined not by numbers, but by alignment. You don't rush it. You don't fear it. You simply continue speaking, thinking, and acting in a way that matches expansion. And expansion responds. So let this be the final anchor you carry with you. Wealth does not arrive when you force it. It arrives when you stop blocking it. And the simplest way to stop blocking it is to become conscious of the words you allow to shape your inner and outer world. Choose your direction. Love the abundance you encounter Appreciate the flow that is already present, and trust that the universe, always listening, always responding, will meet you exactly where alignment lives. Because from alignment, abundance is not summoned, it is inevitable. And when inevitability becomes part of your inner knowing, effort transforms once again, not into stillness, but into ease. You move without dragging the past behind you. You act without carrying fear into the future. Each step feels intentional, even when the destination isn't fully visible yet. This is where people often say, everything just started clicking. But what truly clicked was not luck or timing, it was alignment. The inner conversation finally matched the outer direction, and when that happens, life stops feeling fragmented. Joseph Murphy often emphasized that when the subconscious mind accepts prosperity as natural, it stops creating internal resistance. No self-sabotage, no guilt about wanting more, no unconscious fear of success. The mind becomes a cooperative partner instead of an obstacle. You begin to feel comfortable with expansion. Bigger ideas no longer intimidate you. Larger numbers don't trigger anxiety. Responsibility feels exciting instead of overwhelming. This comfort is a clear sign that you are ready to grow into what you are calling forward. And here is something few people talk about. Readiness has nothing to do with perfection. It has everything to do with relationship. When your relationship with money shifts from fear to respect, from avoidance to understanding, from tension to clarity, money responds. You also begin to notice that abundance shows up in layers, first as awareness, then as confidence, then as opportunity, then as resources, and finally as tangible results. Most people quit at the awareness stage because they expect immediate proof. But alignment always precedes evidence. This is why patience now feels different. It is no longer waiting, it is participation. You are actively cooperating with the process rather than watching from the sidelines. Every word you choose is a contribution. Every thought you redirect is an investment. Over time, your inner world becomes quiet in the best possible way. There is less noise, less mental bargaining, less comparison. You stop measuring your progress against others and start measuring it against your own alignment. And that shift alone frees enormous energy. From this place, gratitude flows naturally. Not because you are forcing positivity, but because you recognize how much has already changed within you. You feel grounded, capable, present. Those qualities attract far more than effort ever could, and one day, often without ceremony, you realize that abundance has become part of your normal experience. It is no longer something you think about constantly. It simply supports your life. It gives you options. It creates space. It allows you to contribute more fully. That is the real milestone. Not the number, not the moment, but the state where your words, thoughts, and actions move in the same direction. The state where you no longer argue with your own growth. The state where wealth feels natural, deserved, and manageable. This is what it truly means to command abundance, not through force, not through demand, but through alignment that is steady, calm, and consistent. So continue forward with awareness. Continue choosing consciously. Continue loving what you see expanding around you. Continue appreciating the flow that meets you at every step, because when your language reflects who you are becoming, the universe does not hesitate. It responds. And as the universe responds, you begin to recognize that this dialogue between you and life has become effortless. You are no longer questioning every sign or doubting every step. You trust the rhythm. You trust the unfolding. You trust yourself within it. This is where many people finally realize that abundance was never something to be chased, proven, or earned through exhaustion. It was something to be allowed through alignment. And alignment, at its core, is simply living in agreement with your own expansion. Joseph Murphy taught that when the conscious mind stops interfering with fear and contradiction, the subconscious mind moves freely toward expression. At that point, results no longer feel surprising, they feel appropriate, timely, right? You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start recognizing, of course this is happening. Not from entitlement, but from resonance. Your inner state matches the outcome. And when inner state and outcome match, life flows. From here, you no longer need constant motivation. Motivation is fuel for resistance. Alignment is self-sustaining. You act because it feels natural to act. You grow because growth feels inevitable. You create because creation feels like who you are. And that is the quiet power behind everything you've learned here. The 3 words were never magic spells. They were anchors. Anchors that returned you to your authority, your openness, and your awareness. Choose keeps you in command of your direction. Love keeps you aligned with expansion instead of resistance. Appreciate keeps the channel open for more to arrive. When these become your natural language, the universe hears clarity instead of confusion, readiness instead of struggle, trust instead of doubt, and from that place, abundance does not need to be summoned. It arrives because nothing is blocking it anymore. So let this be the final reminder you carry forward. Speak as someone who is becoming. Speak as someone who trusts the process. Speak as someone who understands that wealth is not a distant destination, but a response to alignment. Because the moment your words align with who you are ready to be, the universe does exactly what it has always done. It answers. And in that answer, there is a quiet certainty that no circumstance can shake. You no longer depend on external validation to feel secure in your direction. You don't need constant reassurance that things are working. You can feel it. Alignment has its own signature, and once you recognize it, you never confuse it with wishful thinking again. This is the moment where your relationship with effort matures. You still show up. You still take action. But you are no longer forcing outcomes. You are responding intelligently to what life presents. You are co-creating instead of struggling. And that cooperation changes everything. Joseph Murphy taught that the subconscious mind moves most powerfully when it feels certainty without strain. When your words carry that certainty, calm, grounded, unshaken, your inner world becomes stable. And stability is fertile ground for prosperity. From here on, your growth no longer feels fragile. It doesn't depend on perfect conditions. It doesn't collapse at the first challenge. It adapts. It adjusts, it continues. Because it is rooted in awareness, not emotion, you may still encounter moments of contrast, but contrast no longer derails you. It refines you. Each experience sharpens your clarity, strengthens your discernment, and deepens your trust. You are no longer learning whether abundance is possible. You are learning how you uniquely express it, and that is where fulfillment begins to replace striving. You enjoy the process. You appreciate the unfolding. You recognize progress even before results fully materialize. Because you understand now that the inner shift always comes first. So let your language remain your compass. Let it guide you back whenever distraction appears. Let it remind you who you are becoming when doubt whispers otherwise. You don't need to control the universe. You don't need to demand from it. You only need to remain aligned, because alignment is the command. And so this is where the journey gently closes, not with an ending, but with a return to yourself, to the awareness that you were never separate from abundance, never overlooked, never excluded from the flow of life. You were simply learning how to listen, how to speak, and how to align. Joseph Murphy's timeless insight was never about forcing the universe to comply. It was about understanding that the universe already responds perfectly. The moment your inner language becomes clear, consistent, and calm, the response becomes unavoidable, not dramatic, not chaotic, just precise. You now understand that wealth does not arrive because you deserve it more than others, or because you struggled enough to earn it. It arrives because your inner world became a place where it could exist comfortably, where it could stay, where it could grow. This is the quiet confidence you carry forward, a knowing that your words matter, that your inner dialogue shapes your outer life, that every moment offers you the chance to choose again. So continue choosing consciously. Continue loving abundance wherever you see it. Continue appreciating every sign of flow, no matter how small, not because you are trying to manifest something, but because this is who you are now, someone aligned, someone aware, someone ready, and when readiness becomes your natural state, the universe does what it has always done without hesitation. it responds.